that I'm 1 out of 7. Out of 7 people in my immediate family growing up, I am the only one who has never had a cancer diagnosis. When I was a little girl in the early 60s, I would go out collecting money with my mother for the American Cancer Society. At that time, they would send out envelopes to different people in neighborhoods and ask them if they would go around the neighborhood and collect money. Well, this was always fun for me because we got to go around. I got to pet all the dogs and all the cats in the neighborhood, and it was a lot of fun for me. But I can remember as a child asking my mother, "Why are we doing this, Mom?" And I remember very distinctly her saying, "Well, we just never know who we might help." In 1975, she was diagnosed with leukemia. In the 1970s, leukemia was pretty much a death sentence. There were no treatments, no chemo, nothing. She would get so weak that I remember her coming to my house one day and she couldn't open a screen door. She was too weak to open it. It was as if her blood would just disappear. And at that time, the only thing that they could do for her to make her feel any better was to give her platelets or whole blood. And they were giving her several units of whole blood and platelets every week. Now, it was the American Cancer Society research that developed the technology to separate the platelets from the whole blood. And this technology is still used today, and it's also used in many other medical applications besides just for cancer. And at that time, the families were responsible for replacing the blood that they used for her. We all donated blood. We were always scrambling for people who would be willing to go down to the blood bank and donate in her name. And during that time, the local American Cancer Society office donated over 100 units of blood in her name. Now, I'm not saying that that's a service that the American Cancer Society provides. What I'm telling you is that's how much the people that work for the American Cancer Society care. The doctors decided that they needed to remove her spleen and that hopefully this would help stop the loss of blood. While she was in the hospital, they asked her if she would be willing to participate in a bone marrow study where they would study the progression of the disease in the bone marrow. They told her, "This isn't going to help you, but it may help others down the line." They told her it was painful, it was done with a local anesthetic, had to drill into the hip bone to remove the marrow. Well, let me tell you, us kids all tried our hardest to talk her out of it. She wouldn't have any part of it. She said, "You know, you never know who this might help down the line." In December of 1976, she lost her battle with cancer. In the summer of 1996, 20 years later, a bone marrow transplant saved my sister Lenora's life. In February of that year, she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I took care of her during that time, and it was the hardest thing that I have ever had to do. As a caregiver, you are completely exhausted all the time, and you're watching someone that you love go through something that is so difficult. My brother Dwayne was her stem cell donor. And I want you to know that the American Cancer Society is still funding platelet and stem cell research. But I want to tell you something else that's very important to me. and that is that the American Cancer Society does not, I repeat, does not fund embryonic stem cell research. A few years later, my sister Roberta was also diagnosed with breast cancer. Hers was bilateral. And not long after that, my sister Bunny was diagnosed also with breast cancer. My brother, meanwhile, was diagnosed with skin cancer. As you can see, I kind of live my life waiting for the other shoe to drop sometimes. But after Roberta's treatments and recovery, she became involved in the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life in Enumclaw, Washington. And when she got involved, she wanted us all to come to Enumclaw and be there for the relay and support her in this. And so, of course, we all did, because that's the kind of family we are. We're there for each other. And I cannot tell you how I felt when I watched my 4 siblings walk arm in arm around that track in the survivor lab. And then during the luminary ceremony, when I saw the bags with my mother and my father's names, I knew that being involved with the American Cancer Society was something that I had to do. I went back for several years to Enumclaw and participated in their relays. Raised money in Arkansas, I'm sorry. But then one day I got a luminary form in my bank statement talking about a relay that they were having in Mena. I called the bank, talked to the lady who had sent them out, signed up a team, raised $7,000 that year myself, and I've been the chairperson in Polk County ever since. Not too long ago, on Facebook, I saw that my cousin Michael had been diagnosed with leukemia, and without a bone marrow transplant, they give him 3 months to live. I called him, and we talked, and we laughed, and we talked about my mother's story. 36 years later, that bone marrow and stem cell research that they did in the 1970s is still saving lives. Do you think that it's important that we continue cancer research? I do. I've seen it myself. American Cancer Society researchers save thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. I've seen it firsthand through bloodpheresis, bone marrow studies, stem cell studies, various drugs and chemos. And people ask me, why do you relay? And I tell them it's because it's my legacy. I want my grandchildren to know what my mother did for love. She would have endured it all for a stranger, but ended up doing it for those that she loves. I want there to be treatments should my grandchildren ever be diagnosed with cancer. Without research now, there won't be new treatments, new cures to be found. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Regina Lawry, and I relay in Polk County, Arkansas.